Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Cameron and I am a consultant for KPMG working and living here in New York City. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you all about how to network your way to your dream job. So this video is specifically made for those of you who may be currently going through the application process for either full-time or internship roles in banking, consulting, and finance. But I think everything that I say in this video will certainly be applicable for all business majors, regardless of the actual specific industry you're looking to go into. So I went through the application and recruiting process for full-time roles about a year ago, and I was absolutely blown away by the level of success I had in obtaining super days and offers this last recruiting cycle compared to the year before. Frankly, I didn't have a lot of success hunting for internships, even with a stellar resume and great experiences. So realistically, the only major difference I could see between my process for applying for internships and applying for full-time roles was my emphasis on networking. So in today's video, I'm going to help you leverage the power of networking to help you land your dream role. Let's get into it. So just a quick disclaimer before we get into the rest of the video. Networking will give you the opportunity to get the role, but you still need to earn it. You still have to ensure that you are fully prepared on all other aspects of the application and interview process. This includes technical skills, company and industry knowledge, as well as the ability to talk about your own experiences in an effective and dynamic way. This video will help you get your foot in the door and give you the opportunity to succeed, but it's really going to come down to you and your merit at the end of the day to get the job. With this being said, let's get into the rest of the video. So in today's video, we are going to be talking a lot about LinkedIn. LinkedIn truly is the most powerful tool you can leverage during your application process. Before going into anything else, it's extremely important that your LinkedIn is on point. This means making the effort to have a good amount of connections already on there. Obviously 500 plus is a plus. Also update your experiences, whether you've had prior internships or involvement on campus. Make sure that everything on your LinkedIn is up to date. And also, most importantly, make sure to have a good headshot. And no, this does not mean a poorly cropped version of your senior prom picture. Now, I know I've talked about this in a few other videos, but just to reiterate it, for my recruiting process last year, I made sure that for each role I was interested in applying for, I would reach out to and set up a call with at least 2 people. Now, this may mean that you have to reach out to a lot more than 2 people to actually get to the point where you're having a phone conversation with 2. But realistically, it won't hurt you in any way to reach out to more than 2 people. The more, the merrier. And it's important to remember that at the end of the day, the objective of this whole process is to set up these phone calls. It's one thing to connect with someone and have a quick conversation, but it's something entirely different to actually sit down and have a conversation with them. It not only is way more personal, but it definitely leaves a lasting mark on that person, and they will remember you way more and feel way more inclined to kind of go out of their way to help you on the process. So remember, we're not just trying to have connections on LinkedIn, we're trying to build these real life personal connections and relationships with people through phone conversations. So I understand it can be kind of intimidating to just reach out to someone completely cold. So because of that, I would always try to at least start with seeing if anyone from my school went into this role. I was very fortunate to go to the University of Florida, which has a very large and well-respected business school that ends up having students go all across the country in all different roles. So frankly, for a lot of roles I was applying for, I could find some sort of connection to UF. So I think this is a really good place to start. Try to see if your school has any connection, any alumni currently in the role, but obviously it's not going to work every time. And it's important that regardless of if you have a prior connection or not, you still pursue it. Even if no one from your school ended up in the role, I think it's still important to kind of find some sort of similarity or connection between you and the person you're reaching out to. This may not be extremely clear prior to the phone conversation, but it's really important that in the phone call, you find some way to connect with them on a more personal and social level, more so than just you're interested in the role that they're currently in. For me, I had a great conversation with someone who I previously had no connection to, but in the course of the conversation, I found out that he played basketball in high school and so did I, so we were able to connect over that. And then from there, we were able to find out that we actually had a similar friend. He had a friend who was an older brother in my fraternity. And this was just a crazy connection, but it was so powerful down the road. He definitely went so far out of his way to send my resume to the right recruiters and the right people. And long story short, I ended up getting an offer for this banking role after probably the easiest super day I will ever go through. So I know I mentioned reaching out to people who are in the role that you are applying for. I think it's important to reach out to these junior roles, these analysts or associates. But at the same time, it's also very impactful to reach out to people a few more years ahead in their career. The junior people will know the recruiting process better than anyone else just because they went through it a year ago, 2 years ago. It'll be extremely fresh for them. But at the same time, it's the senior people who have a little bit more decision-making power, maybe understand a little bit more as far as what HR is looking for in their hires, maybe the numbers of hires that they can have for this year. And so it's just important to kind of have a good balance between people who just went through the recruiting process but don't have a lot of say, and people who are a little bit further away from the process but definitely know what HR is looking for and have a little bit more of that decision-making power. So find a balance between the two. As I said before, it will never hurt you to have had too many conversations or connections with people in the firm. So from here, as soon as you identify these connections, in your connection request, I would send a message that sounds and looks just like this. Hey there, Cam. I'm interested in applying for a few full-time roles with KPMG and their advisory group. And as a fellow Gator, you looked like the ideal person to connect with. If you have the time, I'd love to set up a quick phone call to learn more about the role and the culture at KPMG, as well as any other resources that might help me along the application process. Thanks. I think it's important that you start all of your messages with mentioning the person's name. I know in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he mentioned the importance of saying people's names. It automatically and subconsciously makes people like you a little bit more. Also, it makes the message more personal and shows that it's not a true copy and paste job. So I would honestly kind of follow that message to a T. Obviously, if someone didn't go to your school, you'd have to adjust it a little bit, but that is a great place to start. It's very clear with what you want out of the message, but it also comes across very friendly and doesn't ask too much out of the person. So hopefully somewhat soon after that, maybe it's later that day, later that week, you get a response. From here, I think it's very important to try to move as quickly as possible to set up the phone conversation. People are busy and you want to make sure to get everything finalized while you still have their attention. I definitely had a lot of experiences when I would reach out to someone and finally they'd get back to me. And then for whatever reason, I'd wait a little bit before responding to them. And by the time they would respond again, it was days or if not weeks later, and the ship had sailed. I had already gotten rejected from the role, or I had decided to set my sights elsewhere. So try to move as quickly as possible to set up the call. Also, once they give you some options for when they are free, I would always choose to set up the call as soon as possible to today. Ultimately, this gives me less time to stress and get anxious about the phone call. But in addition to that, realistically, time is of the essence in applications. The earlier your name is in the system, the better. So definitely try to get the ball rolling and set up that call as soon as possible. And again, throughout this conversation, make sure to emphasize how much you appreciate them taking the time to talk with you, and just try to find some time that they have 15 minutes. 15 minutes is really all you need. I don't suggest you ask for any more time than that, just because you don't want to have a phone call that is too long to the point where you run out of things to say and it gets awkward. And then also, you don't really want to be a burden on their schedule. People are busy, and finding 15 minutes in a day to talk is a lot easier than 30. And trust me, you can make a better impression in 15 minutes than you can in 30. Frankly, with 30 minutes, there's just too many opportunities for you to say something wrong, or for the conversation to get awkward, or for them to just realize, wow, this is taking too much time. But in 15 minutes, it's so quick, you can really kind of show your personality just the same as you could in a 30-minute conversation, but without taking up too much of their time. And trust me, people appreciate their time. So now that you have the call scheduled, here are some things you need to do to prepare. It's always important to have at least 5 questions ready to go for the call. Realistically, you won't need all of these, but it's always better to become over-prepared. The questions should be those along the lines of asking about the application and recruitment process, the culture at the firm, and what their experience has been like working in this role. I really think it's important to not come across as too needy or interested in these introductory phone calls. I think it's very important to emphasize that you are hoping to find a company that is the best cultural fit for you personally. In my calls, I always try to talk more about the culture of the firm, learn about that, because at the end of the day, that is way more important than the kind of day-to-day tasks and the nuances of the role. The people at the firm are what is going to end up making or breaking the role for you. And because of that, it's so important that you find the right fit for you at the start of your career. Also, moving forward, I think in the actual course of the conversation, it is so important to be overly friendly. Again, I know it can be intimidating going into these calls. These people seem so smart and so much further ahead of you in their careers, but everybody is a person at the end of the day. And one of my favorite quotes from Ali Abdaal is, "Everybody is nice, you just have to go first." You really don't have to worry too much about these phone calls. They're not trying to get you, they're not trying to be anxious. Everybody wants the conversation to go well. Also, realistically, if someone ended up deciding to reply to your LinkedIn message and take the time to set up this phone call, they're probably going to be on the nicer end of the spectrum anyway, so they're going to be friendly and you really have nothing to worry about. It is still important to come into the conversation with a very professional outlook, but read the social cues. So much of networking and building relationships is kind of mirroring the other person. If they are more of a serious type, follow their lead. If they are being more social and are maybe asking some more personal questions about your experience from college, lean into that. At the end of the day, in these 15-minute phone calls, you really just want to have a good conversation. You really just want to leave them with a positive interpretation of you. Finally, finish the call asking them if they have any other recommendations for great people for you to connect with. They might say other associates in their current role, maybe some senior people, or even recruiters. Whatever names they give you, definitely make sure to reach out to them. Also, when you do reach out to these people, always include, "Hey, I had a great conversation with Cam, and he mentioned that you'd be a great person for me to connect with." This is really the easiest way to start to really build your network within a company. It's crazy how quickly the snowball can kind of build up, and you really can make such great connections in a quick period of time. Okay, so now that you have finished the call, the job is not yet done. It is so important that you always follow up. I typically wait about 2 days before I send a quick message back to the person I had my conversation with. I typically just thank them for taking the time to talk with me, and I mentioned in that message that I followed their advice and reached out to the people that they mentioned. Also, again, you can kind of include one last sentence that if they have any advice for the application process or any other resources or recruiters to reach out to share that advice with you. Also, I always try to incorporate some more social aspects of the conversation into this message, just so that it can maybe jog their memory of our conversation and maybe think back more fondly of the conversation than me simply talking about the application process. Honestly, a lot of times employees might just need to be reminded of the conversation. It's easy for them to say, "Yeah, I'd love to send in a referral" during the conversation, but then they quickly get caught up in work after the conversation ends. So sending this follow-up email might just remind them, "Oh yeah, that's right, I wanted to reach out to the recruiter about Cameron. He seemed like such a great hire for the company." So these follow-up emails can kind of just jog their memory and get them to send those messages. So finally, in conclusion, if you can consistently follow these steps for each role you apply for, you will be absolutely amazed at the great connections that you can build in such a short period of time. This obviously helps immensely during the interview process. If you can mention that you've reached out to and had conversations with several people within the group already, it really does show that you care and you're taking the application process seriously. Also, a very common question in interviews is, what attracts you to our company? And after going through and having conversations with a lot of employees, it's really easy to bring that up in the answer to these questions. You can say, "Honestly, I've spoken to Ben and John, and your culture really shines through them. I'm amazed by the level of people that you have at your company." You can kind of just incorporate those friendly and great conversations you have with those people into your answer to these questions, and it really would kind of catch them off guard and show them how much effort you've already put into the application. Now, I understand that it is very hard and time-consuming to put in this level of effort into each role that you're applying for, but as you can tell, it truly does pay off immensely. You never know the doors that a certain conversation can open for you. Your whole life can change in the matter of one conversation, and you really never know when that conversation will happen. So it's important to just have as many of those potential conversations as possible. With all of this said, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, reach out to me on Instagram at Galbraith or connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions at all. I'd love to help you guys out. Also, subscribe to the Morning Brew for the best daily business newsletter. It is such an important aspect of the interview process to know market trends. I could not recommend them more. With all this said, I'll see you guys in the next video. I wish you the best of luck on your application journey. Peace.